Hi, I'm Dr. Mike, host of the free iTunes podcast, Psychiatric Secrets Revealed with Dr. Mike, but that's not why I'm here today. This is another Saving Savvy episode, and this time it's more editorial again, and it's about that controversy between RAW versus JPEG. So Reuters recently put out a statement saying they only wanted JPEG images, and of course that's created quite the controversy because for the longest time there's been this mantra of using RAW files. So, of course, RAW files have some advantages. They have greater dynamic range, you can adjust the white balance better, you can pull stuff out a little bit better if you need to. But I've never been a big RAW user. Now, I have used RAW in the past, but what I've said many times on other podcast or other videos here is that the files are huge, they're a pain to use, it's much easier to use JPEGs, and let's be honest, JPEG images can be quite excellent, especially with new cameras, even some of the old cameras. So this whole controversy about RAW and using RAW always seemed to me sort of ridiculous, because if you have professional photographers who are adjusting their white balance, who are adjusting their camera settings properly, and they're using a great camera that has low noise performance and high ISO performance, the use of RAW in many cases shouldn't be necessary. In fact, RAW is a better file format for inexperienced photographers because they're screwing everything up. Or how about cameras that have smaller sensors and you're going to want to use some of those more advanced noise reduction algorithms and such in there. So of course, this is an exaggeration in the sense that I'm sure there'll be photographers that will list in the comments below that this RAW image saved their career or something, but really it's probably because they didn't do things properly. So I was in a church recently and had to take some photos of a wedding, and in the past I would say, I've got to use RAW because the different lighting and all that, and all I did was a custom white balance and everything was fine. And when I was out in the daylight again, I pressed a little custom button and I was back to the regular automatic white balance, which works perfectly well in the vast majority of cameras. So whether Reuters or not should have their restriction, that's their business. But I think what it points out to is this never-ending cycle of charismatic photographers, I should say, that they come up with an idea and then everyone has to follow suit. So whether it's RAW, everyone's got to do RAW. If it's a big sensor, everyone has to do a big sensor. Well, then the 7D Mark II came out, and whoa, this gives you a better crop factor. So if you're a sports photographer or a nature photographer, you need a crop sensor. And then the little micro four thirds sensors started getting better and better noise performance, and well, now you've got to have a micro four thirds camera because everything is smaller. So I guess what I'm trying to say with all of this is that we can produce excellent pictures with a lot of existing equipment, even a digicam if we choose to. But we have to be conscious of what we're doing and deliberate in our photography. And by deliberate, I mean think about stuff. How does a photographer make a professional looking picture as opposed to a snapshot? How does an event photographer capture that event rather than having a bunch of people sitting at a table like this, which I guess is okay? How does a sports photographer capture that moment of excitement and action? And I truly believe that they could do that with they could do that in JPEG or they could do that in RAW, and they're going to get excellent results. So here, I'm not bashing people that use RAW. Certainly people have bashed me for using JPEGs. They learn how to do RAW like this is some rocket science or something, which it's not. But I guess I'm just trying to say is, let's not all be sheep. Let's look at our photography habit, even if we're professional photographers, let's look at it in a reasonable way and do what's best for us and for our particular needs. It makes me think of a story where I belonged to this photo club, and we were doing these pictures of, it was some ethnic event where all these different groups came in. There were folks from India and China and Poland, and it's kind of, they did their like native dance or whatever. So a lot of different photo opportunities, a lot of beautiful costumes, a lot of interesting poses and things like that. And so I had my Micro Four Thirds camera with me, and I do love Micro Four Thirds, by the way. And I was taking all these shots, and I thought, oh my goodness, this is going to be in this big gym. It's going to have these weird lights. I better use JPEG plus RAW. And so what that basically meant is that I got about halfway through the performance, and of course I didn't bring an extra SD card, but I got halfway through the performance, I had used up my card. If I would have stuck with JPEG, I would have had more than enough to go through the entire series of shows. So I don't know if it's always good. And I know we have endless hard drive space on our computers, but is it really endless? And I don't know. I have tons of space on my Mac here, but it's starting to fill up after a couple of years. So anyway, use the format that works for you. Don't be a sheep. Don't just do what everyone tells you to do. Maybe if they have a powerful argument, try it out, see if it works for you. But JPEG is just fine in my book. RAW is okay in certain situations. Crop sensors are great. Micro Four Thirds sensors are great. 1-inch sensors are great. Full frame sensors are great, and they all have their place. But none is superior overall to the other. So, big sensor, great. Get your good shallow depth of field. Get your maybe a little bit better dynamic range. Go to a 1-inch sensor. Get incredibly convenient size that you actually can take the pictures. Anyways, if you get some time, please give my podcast a listen. It's called Psychiatric Secrets Revealed with Dr. Mike, and that's my wife setting a timer. So if you hear that beep, that's what that is. Take care.